I am relieved to see that in the last hour the National Republican Army in Russia has claimed responsibility for the bomb that killed Daria Dugina. That seems to confirm, number one, that Daria Dugina has actually died, and number two, that Ukraine was definitely not behind this atrocity. Make no mistake, a car bomb, an act of terrorism, is an atrocity, not an act of war, and is to be condemned. And it struck me almost from the very moment that this was not the sort of thing that would be condoned by Mr. Zelensky, or indeed by the Ukrainian army active against the Russian invasion for the last 6 months, particularly not in the days leading up to Ukrainian Independence Day today. Now, what do we have to say about this? The National Republican Army is a very shady organization, and the person who has announced the information is a former member of the Duma, a man also with a slightly dodgy background called Ilya Ponomarev. And the National Republican Army is apparently determined to challenge Mr. Putin himself directly. It says in its manifesto, "We declare President Putin a usurper of power and a war criminal who amended the constitution, unleashed a fratricidal war between the Slavic peoples, and sent Russian soldiers to certain and senseless death. Poverty and coffins for some, palaces for others, the essence of his policy. We believe that disenfranchised people have the right to rebel against tyrants. Putin will be disposed and destroyed by us." They are apparently calling on lone wolf operators and also condemn, as I would, the FSB. The FSB, Russia's security service, were very quick to point out that they had evidence that the car bomb attack was by a Ukrainian spy working single-handedly with her 12-year-old daughter, who escaped to Estonia and ran around the place in a mini like something out of the Italian Job. In fact, bizarrely, I was just watching both the original Italian Job and the remake, and both films are tremendously good. In fact, the remake is better than I had thought. But this is nonsense, and it shows once again how the FSB is living in fantasy land and how it's relying on not proper investigations, but allegations and propaganda. Those people who say, "Oh, you're not doing enough work, oh, you're not finding out enough information," believe me, I am scouring Russian media, and I'm trying very hard to find as much information as I possibly can. I'm trying very hard also not to rely too much on Western media, which, as the Russian trolls would say, is biased. But those Russian trolls who are based in England particularly, and who are quite vocal, they need to reflect on something. They might think they're getting a lot of support. They might think everybody is criticizing Ukraine. Well, I'm afraid they're relying on a very, very silly algorithm by YouTube. And once YouTube has got an idea about what you want to see, YouTube keeps repeating what you want to see again and again and again until you actually believe that's what everybody believes. That's what everybody thinks. But I'm afraid it's not true. We have to wake up and smell the roses. That algorithm is a deceit. It's time to face the facts. The FSB is demonstrably useless. It's drawing conclusions which are wrong, and it's doing so hastily to support a failing regime. Mr. Putin is desperate. There is a movement, there are a number of movements, including now a paramilitary movement within Russia designed to question and attack the state itself and Putin's regime in the Kremlin. Putin does not command the trust of his nation. He has suppressed discord. He has suppressed dissent. He has suppressed discussion. But he's not suppressed the inventive spirit that is Russian. Now, I've lived in Russia for many years, and I have many great friends in Russia, and I'm very fond of the country. What we're seeing attacking Ukraine is not the Russia I know. And it's not done by the Russians I know. And so many of those who I know have fled the country, and rightly so. This is not a Russia to be proud of. This is a Russia to live in fear of and to be ashamed of. And this Russia cannot last. It cannot. Meanwhile, the Ukraine, in contrast, Ukraine is behaving spectacularly well, is being led by somebody with confidence, with honor, with respect. Not only respected in his own country, but respected throughout the world. And again, if your information on YouTube sends you off to spurious Brits reporting from the Russian-controlled Donbass, or sends you off to strange Russian reporters who are spouting nonsense, you won't believe this. But if, on the other hand, you just switch on your television, or you just tune in to YouTube without putting in your identity, without logging in, you will see the reality. That login generates an algorithm. Your computer generates an algorithm, and you will only see what you want to see. It's time to see something else. And as I said earlier, I had no idea that there was a Russian-based terrorist group behind Daria Dugina's murder. I had no idea. Of course I condemn it. It's terrorist activity. It's not an act of war. It's not an act of honor. But it is an act of desperation by a people who are so dominated that maybe they can think of nothing else. There is something else. There is something else. It's standing up and addressing the elephant in the room. Because if enough people stand up, Mr. Putin will have to bow out. Mr. Putin needs to hear that his nation does not support him. I think it's only a matter of time before that happens. And when it happens, it will be dramatic.